And we're back with Building the Pride on an emergency podcast because the sky is falling. The sky is falling. Um, not even 24 hours after the Lions' disappointing playoff loss to the Washington Commanders, Ben Johnson has signed a deal to become the head coach of the Chicago Bears. So not only do the Lions lose Ben Johnson, he is now in the division. So they will see him twice every season. It is rumored, per Pride of Detroit, that he is looking to hire former Saints head coach Dennis Allen to be his defensive coordinator. That would mean that people largely believe that would mean that he is looking to run the same schematic style of defense that Aaron Glenn ran in Detroit. I'm happy that it's not another Lions coach that Ben has apparently decided to poach. The question, I think, comes from who is Ben likely to poach from the offensive side of the Detroit Lions game. This also, I would think, means that he is not going to be bringing Ray Agnew along with him as Ryan Poles maintains control of the Chicago Bears roster. We're going to get more details about the length of the contract for Ben Johnson, what he's going to be paid per year, whether or not he'll have final say over the roster, that and who he's going to hire, obviously, to fill out his coaching staff. But he's going to be in Chicago. First football anything since the bloodletting. Super bummed. I hear you, dude. I hear you. It's this has not been an overabundance of great news in the last 24 hours for Detroit Lions football. But I mean, not winning yesterday was obviously kind of a surprise. But Ben Johnson leaving has been kind of the guillotine hanging over the Lions coaching staff for several years now. So he's now officially left. How do I feel about it? I am bummed, like he said, but we had to know this was coming at some point. I firmly believe that there is a plan in place to replace Ben Johnson. Dan Campbell, when he was doing his press conference earlier today, used some language that I think would indicate that he flatly came out and said that he expected to lose both coordinators. So here's one, right? And that happened immediately. It's 4:00 in the afternoon. They say that over the course of the day, negotiations really heated up, started rolling downhill. So we don't know what those look like yet, but he is going to be, I think, a real problem for Detroit because he's going to be coaching Caleb Williams. So I believe in Caleb Williams. I think that Caleb Williams' season can largely be summed up as he had poor coaching. How much of Ben's offense is Dan Campbell? So in year one, when they had Anthony Lynn as their offensive coordinator for 10 games or whatever it was, and then Dan Campbell relieved Anthony Lynn of his play calling duties and then called the plays himself, I think that's about where it stops. I don't know. It's an excellent question, and I wish that I had a definitive answer for you. However, everything that I have read over the last 2 seasons, including this season, so this season and the year before it, is Ben Johnson has largely developed this offense in concert with Jared Goff. Jared Goff knows this offense as well as Ben Johnson. And Dan Campbell said that Jared Goff would have input, I don't know how much, but probably a lot, on who he wants to be his next offensive coordinator. To me, that says they intend to run the same offense. So to me, that says we're probably hiring internally. The two candidates that I think are likely for an internal hire are assistant head coach Scotty Montgomery and passing game coordinator, executive grad assistant, I don't know what his title is, Tanner Engstrand. So if it's Scotty, I think that Jared Goff is going to get a lot of freedom to call plays. He already has the ability to check out of plays at will. So I mean, I don't know that it's going to be too crazy. I don't think we're going to see a drastic change in what the offense is. I think the thing that I am concerned about now is what do the Bears look like right now compared to what the Lions look like right now? And I don't know that the Bears need to do enough. Hey, Bird. Play calling will change 100%. Will it? Well, okay. So to your point, one of the things this year that I have heard NFL analysts, I think Engstrand was being groomed for this, but was that? But is he being groomed because he's the clear favorite to be the person, or are they just developing somebody in the eventuality that Ben leaves, and then we'll see what we have when Ben goes? I don't know. I do think Engstrand was part of the succession plan for sure. So back to Bird, back to your point, play calling will change 100%. I imagine the first 15 plays or so every game are going to look a lot alike. The thing about Ben Johnson that I've heard about all year is how well he layers plays. Like, he's going to give you a look early in the game so that he can do something different later in the game. That, I think, is where Ben's genius is. That, and like how he has taken certain looks and is able to develop multiple plays that are different out of the same look. I think that's the real problem. And now he has a quarterback that I think will thrive in that environment with his creativity, because there's almost no throw that Caleb Williams. Is there a throw that Caleb Williams can't make? He has all the physical tools. He's unbelievably mobile. Like, if Ben Johnson can develop Caleb Williams to be a primarily pocket first quarterback who can then do things like, we're going to just roll you out, we're going to get you on the move. Like, what does the Detroit Lions offense look like with a quarterback who is athletic enough to be moved out of the pocket, to force mismatches, create advantages because he now demands another defender and can threaten you with his legs? I'm nervous about what Caleb Williams looks like in the division with this coach in particular. What do we got? Some more comments here. Ben was awesome. Yeah, Ben. And now the Lions are going to have to. So how do the Lions respond? The thing that I think benefits the Lions the most is you want to promote a defensive coordinator who's familiar with Ben Johnson. So the guy that I would think would have the most knowledge of how Ben Johnson operates and thinks, that's still in the Lions organization, is Kelvin Shepard, the linebackers coach. I would be pretty surprised if the Lions decide to go with a different candidate to replace Aaron Glenn, who I also think is probably getting a head coaching job. So, but I think that the Bears have made an excellent decision here. So let's see. So Pride of Detroit has done some really great stuff. Let's here we go. Let's see. Let's see. We'll debunk some myths here in a second. So this. I'm not going to be on for very long. I just wanted to touch on Ben Johnson leaving. Hey Zakwa, I'm sorry, buddy. This is the worst weekend. And two of my least favorite college football teams, Ohio State and Notre Dame, play for the national title tonight. So it's a real bummer of a 48-hour stretch for me personally. You guys might like those college football teams. I'm not sure. I was raised in Michigan, so can't stand either one of them. So, yeah, Ben's leaving. I'm very worried that he's going to take somebody like Hank Fraley, our offensive line coach, to be his offensive coordinator. And like when I say offensive coordinator, I don't mean play caller. Ben Johnson is going to call plays. Ben Johnson is going to be the play caller on offense for the Chicago Bears. And his offensive coordinator will likely see a nice pay bump, have more responsibility overall for the team. And I think everybody's gonna get some blame for Saturday's Aqua. I think it was a real mess up by just about everybody that's not named Jahmyr Gibbs. So Mike and I are going to talk about the game tomorrow. So if the Lions lose Hank Fraley along with Ben Johnson to Chicago, it's a worst case scenario. So, and one of the dominoes has fallen. So hopefully we don't knock over multiple dominoes. Well, so I'll just say about this. I'll say this about the Commanders. I had not watched the Commanders before last night's game. They were great. They were just great. I mean, Jaden Daniels, I thought, and I said this on our show last week, was I want the rookie to come into Detroit and play his first playoff road, his second playoff game on the road in that environment. And he was up for it. And I just didn't think that he would be. So that was my mistake. I thought that the environment would be too much for him. It was not. So the Commanders looked a lot like what the Lions usually look like. They played relatively mistake-free football. They were really efficient. They were aggressive, and they hit more big plays. And to Zakwa's point, there's a lot. The Lions made a lot of mistakes. Goff made a lot of mistakes. The coaching staff made a lot of mistakes. And some of those are debatable, right? But that's why we have hindsight to look at these things. I mean, I'm not going to look back at the season and say, "Oh my God, what a disappointment." It's always a bummer every time you don't win the Super Bowl. But I mean, they had the best season the Lions team ever has, and so now we have a bunch of new challenges. Mike might be yelling at me right now. Nope. Some girl I don't know is yelling at me. So, but I'm here for the challenges. I like this kind of stuff. Like, I am not happy that Ben Johnson left. I am not happy that Aaron Glenn is likely to leave and that some of our assistant coaches are probably on the way out. I am here for how does Detroit get better? I took a break during the Patricia era because I just straight up couldn't do it anymore. But I'm back for this regime. This regime has been great. And if you think about who the Detroit Lions are, at their foundational level, it's Sheila, Brad, and Dan, and all of those people are still here. And those are the people who found Ben Johnson, who found Aaron Glenn, who found Hank Fraley, and developed these assistants into people that other teams want as coordinators. So just like Brad goes out and drafts rookies and finds valuable free agents and that type of thing, And Dan develops those people into people who will, run through the wall and like bite kneecaps and all of the kind of crazy fun things that he says. They now have to just do that again. No team is immune to turnover. And when you're successful, you're going to have more turnover in your coaching staff because other people want to bring that success to their organizations. I had hoped it would be somebody not in our division and then B, not in our conference, but it is on both. So like now he's a rival. So are you guys going to be like, when the Bears come to play Detroit next season, are you guys going to be like, oh, the return of Ben Johnson, hooray? Or are you going to vilify him because he chose to go to a division rival? I'm probably going to vilify him, to be honest. Like, I respect him. I think he's really smart, and I respect intelligence, but I don't respect you going to a rival. I've never respected that, mostly from college football days. But I mean, I'm going to want to crush him. I mean, I'm going to want to make him sorry that he decided to leave. So I don't know. I am also super bummed that the Lions lost. I feel like they were the better team. They obviously were not the better team on Saturday. All right, Zayqua and I are on the same page. I like it. Call that the wavelength. But we know where we're picking in the draft now, and I would rather be picking 32, but if you can't be 32, 28's better than 30 or 31 or 31, 30 or 20. I can count backwards. So I don't know, man. Like disappointed for sure. Still proud of them. I'm still proud of the Lions. Really happy with their season. I liked watching every game. Helps when you win. I think that it's really uplifting. So, is there anybody that you guys want for Ben's replacement? Like, I know Joseph Osteen and I, we talked a little bit about Engstrand. I've heard Scotty Montgomery. So, Zayqua, man, I am loving your questions. So Graham Glasgow was by far the worst offensive lineman on the Lions starting five. And here's the situation that I'm going to be watching closely. Kevin Zeitler might decide to retire. Like, he is in his mid-30s. He just had the best season of his career. He might go one more game. Mahogany basically played the Chicago game, the second Chicago game, I think it was like week 15, and the playoff game against Washington when Zeitler couldn't go. He was great in both of them. He was really good in both of them. If Zeitler retires, I think that Mahogany simply takes his spot. He's the right guard of the future. And you go Taylor Decker. I got to start saying Taylor Decker. I cannot stop saying Eric Decker. I'm addicted to it. But you go Taylor Decker, Glasgow, Ragnow, Mahogany, Penei Sewell. That's one option. Say Zeitler wants to come back for one more run at an NFL championship, at a Super Bowl, and you give him like 1 year, $10 million or whatever to come back because he was awesome. I think you have to go, and I would be surprised if the Lions didn't go into camp with an open competition at left guard, because maybe he's better next year. Maybe he had an injury all season that was nagging him, that was hampering his performance. I don't know. I mean, it may not have been serious enough to warrant showing up on a week-to-week injury report, but he has to be better than what he was. He was obviously the weak link. He's also in his 30s. I think he's 32, 33 years old. Let me check over the cap real quick. Riveting content here. Let's see. Where are you, Graham? Here you are. Oh, wait, ads. He is 32 currently. He is under contract for next season at 7.4, and then his year 34 season in 2026. He has no guaranteed money left, so you could cut him and you take a 2.8 dead cap hit and you'd save 5.5 million. And then he has a void year on his contract after that. So he's on the roster next year for sure. And then if he has this, but like say Glasgow beats him out for left guard, he'd be one of the better sixth or backup offensive linemen in the NFL. Like he can play tackle, guard, and center. So I almost wonder if not playing, 60 snaps a game, 65 snaps a game, would benefit him and just health wise and keep him fresh. And you just lean on his experience if there is an injury somewhere along the line. And then he fits into whatever spot he's quote unquote best at. So I also wonder if this is the last year that we have seen Dan Skipper in Detroit. His contract is up. I have heard that Giovanni Manu has really, really absorbed a lot of coaching this year and is now like, not only is he 6'8", 350 pounds of like enormity. Like the dude is enormous. But when coaches are asking him questions like, so what did you do wrong? He's giving them the correct answer. So it's not that he doesn't know how to get better. It's just putting that into practice. And so he's going to have a full off season. You can save $1 million by not re-signing Skipper, and that's just baseline cheap money. Do I think Eberflus would be a scheme fit as a DC? I heard he runs a lot of zones. So let's talk about. I'll be on as long as I keep getting questions. Is Eberflus a scheme fit? He runs a lot of zone, so no, right off the bat, right? Because the Lions don't want to run zone. And even if Aaron Glenn leaves, I don't think that philosophy walks out the door. I think that's Dan Campbell's philosophy, and Aaron Glenn fits it and coaches it. So do I think that the Lions should have run more zone than they did? Yep. There were lots of times this season where I thought you don't have to live by the sword and die by the sword as much as you're doing. Like you can just kind of die by the sword every once in a while. When anybody does anything time and time and time again, you become predictable. And when you become predictable, your matchups massively shift because now teams know how to attack you. And if I have a critique of Aaron Glenn, is that he never, ever, ever switched. I mean, the thing that he did, the way that he adapted, the only way he adapted that I have heard this season is after Hutch went out, he just started blitzing a ton. And I think some of the problems in the passing game were you're blitzing that fifth or sixth player sometimes, and then teams would just throw behind the blitz. San Francisco just annihilated Detroit over the middle of the field. Like the Washington game that we just watched felt a lot like the San Francisco game to me. The Buffalo game, they just, wherever the Lions blitz, they ran their running backs behind that space, and their running backs in the passing game just gouged the Lions time and time again. And so, like, if that kind of stuff is happening and you don't adapt, I don't think that you're coaching as well as you could potentially coach. So, if Kelvin Shepherd is the guy, is that going to change, or is he just going to live and die by the same sword? If he's going to die by the same sword, I don't know that I want him as the DC. I just think that he's probably the most likely pick to be the next DC. So, and then if he's the next defensive coordinator, then the Lions have another coordinator who's an African-American who can be developed to potentially be another head coach in the NFL, and I think that's valuable. I want the Lions to do that kind of stuff, to be because then I think what you get is you get a bunch of people, black guys who are former players themselves, who know that they're going to have an opportunity in Detroit. Oh, Joe, he must have, what I heard he was asking for money wise from Washington last year was ridiculous. So I mean, I would be surprised if he's not a top 5 paid coach in the NFL. So that, to me, that says something like $16-17 million a year. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if it was like 18 million over 4 years, $75 million, something like that. I think Chicago, I mean, like, he's not going to leave just to coach Caleb Williams. And like, Chicago is cold. Chicago is, they still have that just horrendous field. You know, so like, and if Ryan Poles is the GM and you don't give final say to Ben Johnson, what is he doing? Like, he could have been the coach of Washington last year, and you had some idea you were either going to coach Caleb Williams or Jaden Daniels, depending on who the Bears took, and it was overwhelmingly likely that they were going to take Caleb Williams. So you were going to be the coach of Jaden Daniels. That seems like a pretty attractive option. They were going to let him be the face of the franchise. Ben Johnson would have been Washington's clear, the buck stops here person. Like, everyone would have reported to Ben. You know, they flew their owner, their GM that they had just hired. Well, that window was open. Thanks, Brad. The window is not closed. The window is not closed in Detroit. The window is wide open. They flew their owner, GM, and one other VP out to Detroit to go talk to Ben. And mid-flight, he was like, "No, thanks. I don't know what was said, but he let them know that he wasn't interested, and he was coming back to Detroit. They just turned the plane around and went back to DC. So if you're turning down that to go be the coach in Chicago, I mean, really? So what is it? You know, like, if it's not power, it's money. And I don't see how he gets power because Ryan Poles is there. So I'm interested in two things: what money he got, and then whether or not Ryan Poles reports to Ben Johnson. So that's the details I'm going to be refreshing my phone on over the next 24 hours. So I think the Lions are going to be just fine. I do think they will regress, but a regression from a 15 win team might be 12 wins, 11 wins. You know, and I still think that you're probably winning the division next year at 11 or 12 wins, because Minnesota is probably going to have JJ McCarthy as their next quarterback, and he is a rookie. And like, I still think that a rookie is going to take time to adjust. So I think that they will really regress. And then Chicago has to, I mean, even though they're getting Ben Johnson, I would be surprised if they just hit the ground running. I mean, remember, it took Detroit 1.5 years to get going. Now Chicago has the quarterback, and they have a couple other pieces from where Detroit started. But does that shave it down to 1 year as opposed to 1.5? Or I would be surprised if they just came out of the gate screaming. Now we really find out how good of a head coach Dan is. Every great team has to reload. Well, I mean, I think we know what kind of head coach Dan is. I mean, I don't think that's the way that I read your comment, Zaquan, is how is Brad going to adapt to the change? Right? But like, I think that the best thing the Lions can do to have the same kind of to have the same kind of success year to year, is they're going to have to hire internally, so the learning curves are shorter. So if it's Tanner Engstrom or Scotty Montgomery and Calvin Shepard, I think that's the best option next year to have the team look like it does this year. Or you go outside of the building, and you look for somebody that might want to come, like, can you find a Cliff Kingsbury from like the college ranks? Who's the next Cliff Kingsbury? Does that guy want to come and be a coordinator in Detroit? I think the offense can do a lot of different things. It just depends on what you want to do. I mean, like, so, I mean, the contract with Goff doesn't look good right now. But we'll talk about that more tomorrow. So, all right. So I guess we'll just have to wait on some details. I'm sure we'll get some more as the news cycle continues to refresh. And let's just keep our fingers crossed that we don't lose any more like assistant coaches or that kind of thing. And we'll get some more information on why Ben decided on Chicago as opposed to Jacksonville or Las Vegas. And we'll talk about the game and where the Lions go from here tomorrow at 7:00. So I hope to see some of you guys here then. Bring your best takes and some ideas that you want us to talk about, and we'll talk about them. Thanks, guys. Lions offseason starts now. Peace.